In this video, I'm taking you from zero to building your very first voice AI agent. By the end of this video, you'll have a live working agent that can deal with customer support questions, and then we'll also be building an agent that can check availability and book appointments into Google Calendars and update a CRM. So why should you care about AI voice agents right now? Well, in 2008, Facebook ads were new and mostly ignored, and so the businesses that started learning how to use them and implement them into other businesses had a massive advantage. They got cheap attention, low competition, with clients lining up, and you can imagine how much harder it is now to start a marketing agency compared to back in 2008. And the way I see it, AI voice agents in 2026 are the same as Facebook ads in 2008. You're super early, and if you can learn these skills now, you'll position yourself for an absolutely massive opportunity. So agents can now answer phones 24/7, they can now book appointments, qualify leads, they can follow up with leads, plus a lot more. You can plug them into Google Calendars, CRMs, and payment systems. And the truth is, most businesses have no idea how to set these up yet. So if you can be the person that can help them implement them into the business, you're setting yourself up for a massive opportunity. So here's what most service-based businesses know now. A lot of their phone calls go unanswered, their staff are overloaded, and they're leaving money on the table. They're paying money for leads, but then they're missing the calls from those leads, which is just wasted money. If you can be the person who can build these systems to prevent those leads from being wasted, or deal with customer support questions so that they don't have to hire people to do so, then that's a massively valuable thing for a business to have. If you can learn how to build robust AI voice agents, you're setting yourself apart from someone who just uses AI tools to someone who knows actually how to build them. You can either use this skill to automate your own business, or you can learn how to build and implement these for other businesses. And the best thing is that we're super early right now. And the truth is that most people have maybe heard about AI voice agents, they've maybe watched a couple of YouTube videos on how they work, but not many people know how to actually build them and implement them into businesses in a way that provides value. So here's what you're going to learn from this video today. You're going to learn how to build a voice agent that can talk to customers. We're going to learn how to set it up so that it can check availability in a Google Calendar, book appointments, and then log everything into a CRM like Google Sheets. And you're going to learn how to create this in a repeatable framework that you can repeat and implement into various different businesses. So here are the tools that we're going to use. If you've been watching a few of my other YouTube videos, you'll know that the stack I like to use is Vapi and NA10. Essentially, Vapi is what we're using on the voice agent side. So we're building out the real-time audio, the phone numbers and the voices, and we're giving it the tools that it needs to create these functionalities. And then NA10 you can think of as the back end or the plumbing. So this is how we're going to automate the workflows. So for a kind of high level overview, basically what will be happening is the caller will be talking to the Vapi agent, and then the Vapi agent has access to the tools which it will use NA10 to complete those tasks. And then those will link to your calendar and your CRMs and email to actually carry out those functionalities. So before we start, what actually is an AI voice agent? Well, essentially, it's just a virtual assistant that talks to you over the phone or through your website. Under the hood, it's the same large language models like ChatGPT or Claude, but the difference is the input and output are speech as opposed to text. So when you're talking to an AI voice agent, basically what's happening is your speech is being converted to text through a transcribing tool, so speech to text. That text is then being sent to an LLM model like ChatGPT, which then creates a response. And then we're going to take that response text and then convert it back to speech. And then that's when your voice agent is going to reply back to you. So voice agents are basically LLMs with a microphone and a speaker attached. That's the way you can think of it. Now the reason they're so powerful is because we can make and receive calls. They can handle customer support, scheduling, sales calls, and even surveys. And where the magic happens is where we can integrate these with your systems that can actually do things as opposed to just talk back and forth with the customer. So there are three main types of voice agents that you need to know about and understand. The first is an inbound voice agent. So this is an agent that sits and waits for someone to call the number. And then when someone calls, they pick up the phone and they can go from there. The next one is an outbound. So this is an agent that will proactively go out and call other people. So whether someone has submitted a form on a website, so they're a lead, and then the voice agent will go and call them, or whether you have some sort of cold calling system where it will go through a list and call through various different customers. But outbound is when it's proactively going out to call people as opposed to waiting for someone to call them. And then the last use case is a website widget. So you could have this set up as a little bubble on your website where you could click on it and you could basically talk live to an agent through your website. Now, the anatomy of a voice agent is fairly straightforward on a higher level. So we have the model, or the LLM, which you can think of as the brain behind everything. Then we have the system prompt for the agent, which is basically the system and the playbook that we want the agent to go through. We then have the voice, so just how the agent sounds, the different accents and so on. And then lastly, the tools are what actually gives the agent the functionality to go and book appointments and log into CRMs and that sort of thing. So starting with the model, this is, like I say, you can think of this as the brain behind the voice agent. So you'll probably be familiar with models such as ChatGPT or Claude or Google Gemini. All of these can act as the brain behind the agent. Each of them have different costs, different speeds, and different strengths that you can kind of experiment with. Then we have the system prompt. So you can think of this as the playbook that the agent is going to use to know how to conduct the conversation. It clarifies the agent's goals and how it should behave, and it can act as the script and kind of as the personality of the agent. The voice is basically just controlling what the agent sounds like. So we can play around with different accents, different genders, and these can be provided by various different companies and software, like 11 Labs is a good one, or even Vapi has inbuilt native voices to their software. So the tools are really where the magic happens. So this is what separates a voice agent that can just talk back and forth with you to a voice agent that can actually go ahead and book things and update CRMs and book things into calendars and that sort of thing. They can look up customers in a CRM, they can check your calendar, they can book appointments, they can even send emails or SMS messages to your customers, and they can update databases. So like I say, this is what turns your agent from just chatting into actually doing physical work. So before we go ahead and jump into the builds, let's do a recap on what you've learned so far. So we've discussed why AI voice agents is such a huge opportunity right now. This is the equivalent of Facebook ads in 2008. We know what a voice agent is and a basic overview of how they work. We know the three main types of voice agents, and we know the four building blocks. So the model, the system prompt, the voice, and the tools. And the stack we'll use are Vapi and NA10. So to begin with, let's go ahead and jump into the Vapi dashboard. So this is what you'll be greeted with when you go into Vapi. Now, if we go ahead and open the dashboard here, let me log in. We can see the dashboard here where you get an overview of the average number of calls, the durations, and the total costs. Okay, this gives you some basic information about what's going on. So what we're going to focus on are assistants and tools. Okay, so to give you an overview of assistants, this is an example demo that I was building, but you can see an overview here. So you can see the cost of calling. So in this case, it'll be $0.14 per minute of calling, and you can see the breakdown of where the costs are coming from. So you can see that the Vapi hosting fee is 0.05. We've got a transcriber fee, the LLM fee, and then the voice itself. And we can also have the latency here. Now this can be slightly inaccurate, but it gives you a basic idea of the latency. So coming down, we can see we have an option here to select the model. So if you remember, this is what acts like the brain for the AI voice agent. And you can select different models here, and you can see there are various options depending on your provider, but it gives you a breakdown of the latency and the cost per minute of calling. What I like to do to test is use GPT 4.1 mini. And you can see that the cost is relatively low, $0.01, compared to some of the other models such as GPT-4, a real-time preview cluster, which is $1.15 per minute of calling. So you can see there's massive differences between the cost. So you need to be aware of the cost depending on what model you use, and there will be upsides and downsides to each model. Now here we can choose whether we want the assistant to speak first, whether we wait for the user, or whether we define what the first message is in the prompt. Now, most of the time I recommend using this option because then we can go into more detail into how we want the agent to respond depending on the situation. Now, next we have the system prompt. So in this example, this is one I was building previously, but you can see that we have a bit of a playbook here and the script that we want the agent to follow. I won't get into too much detail into this specific example, but you can see they can get a bit lengthy once we start building out various functionalities. Now the file section here is where we can add like a PDF document that might have company info, like policies on returns and services provided. So we can add this to the prompt, and then it will basically have access to all of that data. So if a customer asks the questions about their policies, it will know how to answer it based on the information in the document that we upload. Now the max tokens, all that means is the kind of the length of the answers we want. So we want to limit this to a certain maximum so that the agent is not giving answers that are too long, which are going to cost more overall. And the temperature you can think of as how crazy does the AI agent get. Okay, so the higher the temperature, the more creative it's going to be, but that's where things can get a little bit crazy. I tend to keep this quite low, so kind of between 0.1 and 0.4 is what I'll generally recommend. Next, we have different configurations. So this is where we can choose the voice and change the accent or the gender of the voice. Okay, so there are different options, different providers. So for example, 11 Labs, and then there are loads of different voices that you can choose from, which will have different personalities, different accents, different genders, and so on. And depending on the provider you choose, we can also adjust various settings. So like how fast they talk, how emphasized are their words, how exaggerated do they sound, all of that sort of thing. So you can play around with these various settings here. We then have the transcriber. So this is how the agent is going to convert the speech from the user into text to then plug into the prompt. Now next we have the tools section. So this is where we can hook up tools that it can use to the back end for things like scheduling appointments, basically giving the agent different functionality. Now you have predefined functions here. So generally the main use for this is for forwarding phone numbers. So for example, the way you would use this is if the customer requests to talk to a human, you could have it forward onto a separate phone number where you'd have maybe a receptionist that would go and pick up the phone. And you can create custom functions here, but to be honest, we can do most of this through tools, so I wouldn't worry too much about this section. Now we have the analysis section. So this is where you can set up prompts for summarizing calls. So once the call has ended, we can basically have it read the transcript of the call and summarize what happened. And then we can use that to plug into a CRM, which we'll set up later. And then we can even set up success evaluation. So we can have an agent basically look at the phone call, and then based on specific metrics that we can define here, it will determine whether that was a successful call or whether it was a failed call. So that over time we can track what's happening and tweak the agent to make sure that it's doing what we want it to do. Then we have the advanced settings here. So this is where we can configure things like HIPAA compliance. So if you're in the US and you have like sensitive patient data, for example, like medical data, then we can turn this on. Vapi does have this inbuilt if you want, but it's $1,000 extra per month to have this in place. So that's why I recommend, if you're going to sell AI voice agents, I tend to recommend steering clear from the medical space because it can get a little tricky and complicated. But it has various different other advanced options here, which you can play around with yourself. I'm not going to go into too much detail here. But you can have the start speaking plan. So this is where you can adjust how the agent responds to the person when they're talking to them. So if you, for example, if you have an agent that you find is interrupting the user before they even stop speaking because they paused for a little bit, then you can adjust this here to make sure that it's waiting and then speaking in appropriate times. And then it even has additional features here like voicemail detection, when to stop speaking, and other settings here. It also has messaging. So this is where we'll basically link it to our NA10 backend so that it has access to all of the different tools that we're going to set up. And then if you remember in the intro, we talked about the three main types, and the last type was a conversational widget you can have on a website. So Vapi is really good in that it gives you a predefined bit of code that you can then plug into a website so that you can have access to that. But as a high-level overview, that gives you an idea of the setup of the Vapi assistant. Okay. So next we'll talk about tools. So in the tools section, you can see I've got a few set up here, but this is basically where we're going to set up the parameters that we want to send to our backend in NA10 so that it has access to different functionalities. So for example, we would set up a tool for checking availability of the calendar. we would then set up a different tool for booking an appointment. Okay, and I'll show you how to use this when we go through a live demo a bit later on in the video. So to begin with, let's build something really practical that you can set up in literally 5 minutes, and that's a customer support agent. So this is an agent that will be able to answer questions like FAQs or questions about shipping policies, refund policies, that sort of thing. Okay, so let's get started. So we're going to create an assistant. We can use the customer support specialist template, and we can create assistant here. Perfect. Okay, so we can see it's already got an inbuilt prompt. What we're going to do is just adjust this to our specific use case. So I've got a bit of a dummy document here which has kind of our company policies for a made-up fictional company called Brightnest Living. Okay, but you can see that this, I just generated this using ChatGPT, but it's got things like shipping policies, returns and refunds, warranties, and so on. Okay, so I've downloaded this as a PDF. But what we want to do before we do anything is just adjust our prompt. So we just want to adjust the prompt to make sure that the business name is matches up. Okay, so I'll just do this. So I'm going to change this from Tech Solutions to Brightnest Living. So I'm just going to check the prompt as well, make sure that it all makes sense. Okay, so I've changed the company name to make sure it matches up. And to be honest, we'll leave everything else as it is for now. You can see that the pre-generated template is fairly robust for the use case of a customer support agent. We're just going to change the first message as well so it matches up with our company. And for the sake of testing, I'm going to change this to 4.1 mini, which is a lot cheaper. So next we're going to add the company information document as a file here. Okay, so we can add a new file. So I've added the file with the company information, and I'm going to hit publish. So now our agent has access to all of the information on that document, so it's going to know how to answer questions. Now, next, we'll leave the voice configuration as it is, so this should be fine for now. And because we're not doing anything, it's just a customer support agent, we don't need to add any tools for this. So I've actually tweaked the prompt. So I've changed the knowledge base to prompt it to use the uploaded file to answer questions about services and policies so that it knows to refer to that document to do so. So let's give this a test. I'm going to ask it a question about something on the policy page and see if it can answer. So we can test it by clicking on here, talk to assistant.
Hi there, this is Alex from Brightnest Living Customer Support. How can I help you today?
Hi, I was wondering what types of products you guys offer.
We offer a variety of products, including wall art, like framed prints, and canvas art, lighting such as table and floor lamps, textiles like throw pillows and blankets, small furniture, decorative accessories, and curated gifts.
Okay, you get the idea. But you can see it called an inbuilt tool to query the file that we uploaded. So you can see that was a really nice and simple customer support build that you can set up in literally 5 minutes that can answer questions based off a knowledge-based document. Okay, so next let's build something that's a little more dynamic. So we're going to build an agent that can check availability of a Google Calendar, then book an appointment, and then also update a Google Sheets document with the information. Okay, so to get this started, we're going to create another assistant. I'm going to call this the Glow Clinic. So I'm creating a fictional company that's a med spa clinic. This time we're going to go for a blank template because we want to customize this a bit more. So we've got the same layout as before. Again, I'm going to select 4.1 mini, so it's a bit cheaper. Then we're going to change this to the assistant speaks first because we're going to define that in the prompt. So I'm going to delete the first message. Now for the prompt, I've already got a pre-made one here that I'm going to use. Now I'm going to provide this for free in the description, so you can use this and base your voice agents off of this template if you want to. Okay, but we're basically just talking it through how we want to have the conversation go, how to use the checking availability tools and the booking appointment tools, which we're going to set up in just a second, as well as just general pointers on how to conduct the conversation itself. So you can have a read through this yourself if you want to. We're not going to add any files this time. We're going to leave this as is. I'm going to adjust the temperature to 0.3. So next, the tools, we're going to add those in a little bit later. Okay, so we'll leave those for now. And then what we're going to want to do now is go to messaging. So this is where we're going to set up the backend on NA10. And this is where we're going to link Vapi and NA10. So for the next part, what you're going to want to do is download the template in the description below for NA10. Okay, if you haven't created an account, then go ahead and do that. And you're going to import from file, and then you're going to import the file that you've just downloaded from the description. Okay, and this is going to be the backend that we're using. So you can see we've got the calculate potential slots branch here, and then the book appointment branch here, and you can see we've got a node for updating the Google Sheets as well as booking the appointment into the Google Calendar. Okay, so what we use to link Vapi and NA10 is something called a webhook. So the way you can think of this is the webhook is going to be constantly listening, and then when someone calls the Vapi agent, the webhook is going to be sent basically to the NA10 backend, and that's when it knows to trigger these flows. Okay, so you'll see in the prompt that the webhook will be triggered when we call a tool which we'll set up. So for example, if we wanted to check the availability, we would the agent is going to ask that information. It's going to then call the check availability tool, and that's when the webhook is going to be activated, and then it's going to basically work through this workflow in step-by-step order, and then it's going to carry out the actions that we define in these nodes here, and then it's going to respond to the webhook, so basically responding to the Vapi agent with what the outcome is, so that the Vapi agent can then reply to the user. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So what we're going to do here is come into this webhook node here. You're going to come to production URL, and you're going to copy this. You're going to come back to the Vapi assistant, and we're going to go down to messaging, and we're just going to paste this in here. Okay. Now the other thing we're going to do is create a header. Okay, so this is basically just authentication. Okay, so it's making it more secure essentially. So what you're going to do to create that is you're going to make sure this is selected as header auth, and you're going to come in here, and I've already got some credentials created, but you would create a new credential. You would create a name, so think of this as a username, and then the value, you can think of this as a password. Okay, set that to whatever you want. I'm not going to do that. Okay, but I know so I've got this header auth account, so I know that the username is client1, and the value or the password is just this. Okay, we're then going to change this. Okay, so we're going to deselect all of these and just select tool calls for now. Okay, publish that, and then everything else we're going to leave the same. Okay, so next we're going to create the tools that Vapi can use to access the NA10. So it's going to be able to check the availability and then book the appointment. So we're going to come over to tools, you're going to create a new tool, custom tool, and so first we need to create the check availability tool, so we're going to do that here. The description doesn't really matter, so you can leave this blank. Now we're going to add in the parameters. Okay, so this is basically we're telling Vapi what pieces of information we want it to send over to the tool. Okay, so again, I've got mine already created here, which you can access for free in the link below. But we're going to paste this in, so make sure this is selected to JSON so you can paste it in. We're going to apply and then save. So that tool is all linked up. And then we're going to create the book appointment tool. So again, custom tool, we're going to select this one here. So make sure it's named the exact same way, same with the check availability tool. Go to JSON, and again, I've got this in the resources below. So you paste this in, and then I'm going to apply this and save. Okay, so this is basically just a bit of code where we're sending over the appropriate information that NA10 needs to execute that specific tool. Okay, so it's just a bit of code in JSON format, so you don't need to worry about this too much. Okay, the other thing you need to do is in the check availability tool, you'll see that mine is set to Europe London time zone. So this is just standardizing the time zones. So you're going to want to change this to whatever time zone your Google Calendar that you're going to be linking to is in. Okay, so make sure you adapt this to your specific use case. Once those are both saved, we're going to go back to our assistant that we're using. We're going to go up here to tools, and then we need to give the assistant those tools that we've just made. So I'm going to give them the check availability and the book appointment tool, and then we're going to publish this. Okay, perfect. Now that should be everything set up on the Vapi end. So we're going to go back to the NA10 workflow now. So next you can adjust these variables to your specific business. So this is just going to be things like the business name, the time zone. Again, make sure this is adapted to your time zone. The working hours that you're open, so 9 till 5. So when it's booking appointments, it's going to know not to book appointments for 6 p.m, for example. And then the meeting duration, we're just going to do 15 minutes. You can add the Twilio number if you want. We're not going to test it with a number, just for the sake of this video. Now, next you're going to want to set up your Google Calendar link here. So what you'd need to do is, if you haven't done this before, is create a new credential. Okay, so mine is already linked, but if yours is not linked, you can create a new one here, and you can basically just sign in with Google, really straightforward, and it will just link your account. Okay, I'm not going to do this. And then you're going to make sure you link up your calendar that you want it to book appointments into. Okay. And then same thing with this node here as well. Make sure that's linked up and to the appropriate calendar. Okay, then next we're going to want to set up the Google Sheets. So we're just going to use this as a simple CRM. Okay, so you're going to go over and create a Google Sheet, and all you're going to have is phone and name. Okay, so once you've created the Google Sheet, you're going to come back and make sure this is linked. So again, create a new credential and you just sign in with Google. You're going to make sure this is the correct Google Sheet. Perfect. Okay, so I'll just make sure that is the correct one. Perfect. You might need to refresh this. So we've just got the phone and name, as you can see. Perfect. So we're going to leave that, and everything else is going to leave the same. So basically what we're doing here, just to explain, is we're routing by the tool name. So depending on whether we want to call the check availability tool or the book appointment tool, it's going to route it accordingly. What this code is doing is it's taking the fact that we've set this to 15-minute time slots, meeting duration 15, and then it's going to calculate all of the potential slots based on the working hours as well, of 9 till 5. It's then going to query our Google Calendar to see what's available, and then it's going to filter for the available ones that are free, and then it's going to respond to our Vapi agent with all of the potential slots that are free for that day. And then the Vapi agent can then respond to the customer saying, hey, look, we've got these times free. Would any of these work for you? Okay. And then once they confirm a time and date, then we would then call the book appointment tool, where we're creating an event in Google Calendar, and then we're updating the Google Sheet CRM so that we just capture their information basically. And then again, we're going to respond back to the agent to let them know that that was successful. And then that's it. Okay, so then we've got them booked in. So the last thing we want to do is set up a phone number that we can actually connect this assistant to. So you would come over to phone numbers and you can create a new phone number. If you're in the US, you can get up to 10 free phone numbers. If you're not in the US, then you need to buy one. I recommend Twilio. You can buy a phone number for like ATP, so that's like $1 a month basically, and you can import it here. So you basically create a phone number on Twilio, and then you can just link the account here, okay? And then what you'd need to do is come over to that phone number. We're going to make sure that we give it to this correct assistant, okay, so that it matches up. Perfect. Okay, so once that's done, make sure this is live, and then we should be able to go ahead and test it out. So to test it, you can call the your Twilio phone number and see how we do.
Hi, this is Chloe from the Glow Clinic. How can I help?
Hi, I wanted to book an appointment, please.
I'd be happy to help you get started. To begin, what treatments are you interested in today?
Botox, please.
Okay, great. The next step is to schedule a complimentary consultation with one of our specialists. Is that something you'd be open to?
Yeah, sure.
Of course, let's find a time that works for you. What day would work best for you to come in?
Any time tomorrow would work.
Great. Let me check our schedule for tomorrow. One moment, please. I have a few times available. Tomorrow, we have 9 a.m., 9:30 a.m., and 10 a.m. Would any of those work for you?
10 a.m. sounds good.
Perfect. May I have your full name, please?
Yep, it's Connor.
Okay, Connor, just to confirm, I have you down for a consultation on Monday, 17 November at 10 a.m. Is that all correct?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Excellent. One moment while I get that set. Your consultation is all set for Monday, 17 November at 10 a.m. We look forward to welcoming you at the Glow Clinic, Connor.
Perfect, thank you.
If you have...
Okay, perfect. So you can see that worked pretty nicely. It checked the availability. We confirmed the time slot, and then it's booked us in. And if we look at our CRM, we've got the phone and name updated as well. So that was perfect. That's exactly what we wanted to happen. Perfect. Okay, so to recap this video, we've learnt what AI voice agents are, why it's such a high value skill to have, to know how to build these things. We've then built a fully working customer support agent, and we've also built a simple agent that checks availability and books in appointments. So your action steps from here is to create accounts with Vapi and NA10, to recreate the customer support agent using your own policies and own FAQs, and then to create your own booking voice agent that links to your specific calendar and your business. If you want more advanced tutorials, then please let me know, because obviously this is a good start, but there's much more to be covered within the world of AI voice agents. We can get pretty complex, and the possibilities are kind of endless at this point. So if you want those more advanced tutorials, please let me know, and I'll be sure to make videos about them in the future.